leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host, having the pleasure to be joined by Hope Zoeller, founder and president of Hope, a firm that specializes in facilitating leader success at every level of an organization. For over 15 years of her professional career, Hope worked at UPS in various roles before founding her company. For the past 17 years, she has been consulting with organizations on leadership development. Hope is also a professor at Spalding University, instructing in the Master of Business Communication program. She has a doctorate in leadership education, a Master of Education in Training and Development, and a Bachelor of Arts in Communications and Psychology. Hope co-authored 2 books with Dr. Joe DeSanti. The most recent is Hope Leaders in the 2020s, New Issues to Face, New Problems to Solve, New Hope for the Future. And it's such an honor and pleasure to have you with me today.
Oh, well, thank you. It is a pleasure and honor to be with you and to talk about something that for me has become much like you, a life passion of really helping leaders, and hence the whole Hope for Leaders in the 2020s. I think everybody needs more hope right now as we're coming out of so many different things. What is that going to look like, and how can we better support each other?
I want to go first, and I would love to learn more about your personal story and your passion for leadership. What took you from working at a large corporation to founding your company and dedicating practically your life now to leadership development?
Well, I have to say it started at a very young age, unbeknownst to me, but recently realized when I found a box of stuff that my mom had sent that, they're in the process of downsizing. So she said, here's a whole box of things from your past, from your childhood. I'm like, oh, lovely. So I'm going through them and I come across a report card from the 3rd grade. And it said that while Hope was very talkative, she needed to spend more time not helping other people, but helping herself. And so as I read that, I just sat there and I started laughing because I made a whole living off of helping other people. But this teacher in that moment, in the 3rd grade, thought that I was spending too much time talking, helping other people. And I really needed to just focus on me and, my work. And so, fast forwarding that, and always thought I would be a teacher of younger children. And now I'm just we're all children at heart. Now I'm doing adult learning, but always thinking I would go into education of some form, but ended up getting a degree in communications and psychology, which, is pretty much applicable to any profession that you're going to go into. But it wasn't until I started at UPS and I was working there part-time in college in international customer service, getting promoted into training. And I was training all the new phone reps. I just had this real passion for going back to, 3rd grade, helping people and seeing how they could become the best or become the better version of whatever task it is that they were going to be doing. So in my 14 years at UPS, I ended up being promoted into management. Got into learning and development and just loved it. So primarily responsible for training new leadership and making sure that they were equipped as much as possible for being successful in their job. And it was like the light bulb went off for me of this is what I want to do. And so fortunately, I was able to do it there for quite a while and get a master's and get a doctorate in this field. And then as large corporations often do, they move you. And they moved me into another area. And it wasn't that I didn't like being there, but I had already found what I really wanted to do. So after some soul searching, I decided to join somebody in his consulting, worked for him for 5 years, and then realized the next level for me was being able to do this on my own. And, I often tell this to leaders I coach, if I can't be growing and looking at the next thing for myself, I can't help other people do that either. And so, it was just the next logical step. And being able to do this was to go out and do this on my own and attract clients and work with clients that really I could help, because you're not everybody's client. You can't help everyone, but those people that I can connect with and help develop and help them be the best version has just been, I can't tell you, it's just been immensely rewarding. And, I go back to the 3rd grade report card. I was like, the light bulb was starting there. It was just a tiny night light that grew into this, massive neon bulb of me being able to do this. And I think right now this work, not that it hasn't always been important, but I think more than ever, and I'm sure you see this, it's so important right now in organizations.
So let's dive in immediately into this. Your experience, the book, your research. And you're in a journey. You said it several times. You want to help leaders be better. So build and adapt their skills into what you called in your book the new era and a workforce with newly articulated needs. So can we start in the beginning? If you can share with us, what are you seeing different in this new era versus before? And then we can dive into the skills.
So differently, a little bit differently. First of all, I'm seeing leaders more tired than they've ever been, and just tired from having to do more, be more, and so much of it is how do I motivate this new workforce that has also come to realizations on their own during the pandemic, hence the great resignation, the quiet quitting of, their passions and figuring out. It's like, how do I continue as a leader to be there for people and to motivate them, all the while still trying to motivate myself and do what I need to do when, I can't even tell you how many times in the last 2 weeks I have heard people say, I don't have enough people. I don't have enough people. And so we've got leaders trying to fill in for roles because, they don't have enough people right now to do them. And then they're trying to keep the ones that are there motivated because they're also filling in for other people. And, I've never in all the years that I've been doing this seen such a shortage of resources. I mean, there's always been a shortage at companies like, oh, we've had somebody quit, we're gonna have to fill them. But it is truly a shortage in that, people are leaving organizations at a very, very high rate right now. And so leaders are really trying to figure out, how am I going to motivate someone to stay? Because most of the research will show you, Gallup, Harvard Business Review, the number one reason why people leave organizations is not because of the organization, it's because of a bad leader. And so there's a lot more pressure today on leaders to show up and be great leaders in order to motivate and keep the people that we still have there, and and the new ones that come on board, that they don't just leave after the first break on the second day, which is also, by the way, something I've been hearing. I'm like, oh my gosh, never have I been hearing this. At least try it 30 days. It's if someone's not feeling connected, and again, I think that goes, not that it's all leadership responsibility, but a lot of it falls on the leader. Is how do I connect and again motivate? And so I see that being a real struggle of how do I be innovative in doing that, because some of the common day things aren't working as well as they used to.
So how do we do that? So let's go into the skills you believe we should build as leaders.
Well, so I came up with an acronym for that, and that's why I so love your podcast about Spread Love. It's because I in the first chapter I talked about leading with love, and I came up with a whole acronym for that. And it's having a listening ear, which is so extremely important as a leader. You've got to show up and listen first and learn and understand what someone's going through and what their needs are, not what you think that is, but what they think it is. And then, having that objective mind where you're being curious, not critical of a situation, where you're making somebody feel of value. You're making somebody feel like they can be the best that they can be, not the best to the person next to them or the person in front of them, behind them, but it's the best person they can be. And then that versatile attitude to do things differently than we've ever done before. And I, had 2 conversations recently with leaders that are just having so much anxiety right now of people not wanting to come back into the office. They're wanting to remain virtual. And, it's like, well, we did it because we had to, but now we can come back in, and not being flexible and letting people decide how they want to work. Can they come in 1 or 2 days a week and then work at home 3 days a week? They've proven they can. And I realize every job is not that, but a lot of jobs are. So how are you versatile with that? I know it's not the way we've always done things, but we're not going back to the way we've always done things. We have to take the best of what was, leave the worst behind, and then move forward with doing that. And then, lastly is empathy. And I've heard on your podcast, you talk about that word so frequently. And it's, really just, again, understanding where somebody's coming from. And I think the best meme that I've seen with that was somebody was sitting kind of like down inside of a cave, and somebody came next to them and just sat there with them, just sat next to them with where they were in that moment, and just was there for them and was supporting them. And to me, that's really what empathy is. It's, again, going back to not judging you, not being critical of you. I don't even have to completely understand what you've gone through, but I do understand and acknowledge you're going through something. So how can I be here to support you, to again help you get where you need to be, where you want to be? And sometimes that means leaving. You don't want that to be the case, but when empathy is there, it's not that judgment of what a person needs to do for their own betterment.
This is so great. And I know we discussed this last time about acronyms. The ones that I thought of were listen, observe, value, and empower.
I love
And
that one.
we're pretty close on how we're thinking about
We are.
about love and organization. And that's why it's so great to have you here. So I hope that you touch on so many different aspects that are key, right? Like we're not doing our work the same way, virtual versus in person. And empathy, all those different aspects. So I'm going to ask you potentially like a tricky question, right? Do you think there is traits that some leaders have that others don't, or do you think everything is coachable, we can evolve, and we can train and nurture those skills, this acronym of love that you talked about, however you were before the pandemic and after the pandemic, right? And I'm asking about this because, like culture doesn't happen overnight, right? So there is a past for a leader and there is a present, a future. So how do you think about this with those leaders you're coaching?
They have to want to be able to modify some behaviors. And I say this when I'm doing one-on-one coaching. It's not about changing someone. And whenever someone will contact me, I've got this leader, you've got to get them to change some things. And I'm like, well, first of all, this isn't a magic formula that's going to make anybody change. But they definitely have to modify some of their behaviors. And so to your question about, is it teachable? It is, but I have to understand and want to learn this and modify this and see the value of it. And for those leaders that have a higher emotional intelligence, some of these things that we're talking about are going to become so much, or they're going to become a little bit more effortless than effort, but there's still effort. I'm still very intentional about listening to you because I could easily in a day be stressed myself and not take the time to be able to do that. But when I am a higher emotional intelligence, I understand the importance of doing that. And so I am doing it and I am putting the work in. When this is something that doesn't necessarily come natural to me, or in some cases, leaders I work with, they just haven't seen it modeled. I mean, they just haven't worked for somebody that's been good at it. And I had somebody last week tell me, I'm not getting it. And so I am not getting it. And, so this is a middle manager that's not getting support from the top leadership. And he's got a very demotivated team, but he is simply saying, if I'm not getting it, I'm not going to give it. Well, that's not a right reason to not give it, just because, you should turn around and, be what you would like to have for yourself. But some leaders struggle with that. So it really comes down to, how much is a leader willing to be able to do some of these things? Because the individual I'm talking about, he is going to have to work so much harder to come in every day and just ask his people how they are. And I know that probably sounds silly, like, what? Just walk through the office. How are you doing today? What's going on? He really has to think about that. I mean, it's almost like something that we're working on now that's on his to-do list. Have you made contact with your people this week? Like, have you said something to them? And so, at some point it's got to become a bit genuine. It may not be his preferred thing to do, but he has to be genuine about it, or she, and doing it for the right reasons, or people see that. People know that you're not being sincere in that. And so, it is teachable, but I will tell you, for some, it is such an exhaustive effort because they have to constantly be really aware of the importance of doing that. And I think the light that's been shined on this for some leaders has been turnover in certain areas of leaders that aren't showing this love. And then it's become evident. And now the organization is like, well, you've got to fix this. You've got to do something differently. And so the ones that get it and can connect with it are going to do well. But the ones that just don't want to put the effort forth, I think then it becomes, are they the right leader for the job? Are they in the right place?
Yeah, so definitely. And there's, as you said, like a bunch of data showing, usually it was more from this positive caring culture, psychological safety side, but now we're seeing also the negative effect of toxic culture. So there's more and more data showing toxic cultures and the impact on employees and results ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So those leaders who spontaneously and genuinely do it, in person. I'm interested because you talked about virtual, and for many leaders, virtual was a challenge to keep this connection because sometimes it's harder, right? Like you say, how are you? And you have those chats when you're in the office, potentially virtually, it feels less informal. And many leaders I'm discussing with, they are so informal that they feel it's hard to just do it, online. Do you have any advice for those leaders and things you've seen working pretty well?
I have a couple of things working really well for the virtual piece of it. And this was something that a leader stopped doing. And then his team actually requested to bring it back. Was they get on and they're all over the country. And so they do come together quarterly. So they have intentionally made a quarterly meeting where they all fly in. They're all together for a day or two. They'll do dinner and maybe go out somewhere fun and, throw axes or play golf or do whatever it is. But every Friday, when they're not doing that, they have a coffee chat. And so they will jump on Zoom, and for 30 to 45 minutes, they don't talk about anything to do with work. Nothing. They just talk about, each one goes around and talks about the highlights of the week, like what's been going on. A lot of them are new parents, so they're talking about what's going on with the kids, or kids that are very active, or people are taking care of parents. How's that going? How's your mom or dad feeling? But it was interesting when the leader said I took it away because I was worried that some people were thinking that, oh my gosh, every Friday this is just a waste of time. This is like a forced thing. But over a period of time, people really came to look forward to, at least I feel like I have a sense of connection once a week. I know that I'm going to check in with you. And I know that I'm going to find out what's been going on. And it just really has brought this team closer together when they're only going to be able to do the in-person thing about once a quarter. But when they do get together once a quarter, it's so much more quality time because they're really focused on accomplishing those things, because it's not like when they're seeing each other quarterly, I don't know what's been going on with you. Like, we've been keeping up. So when we get together, this leader commented that it's much easier to get to the task of what they need to accomplish in that, short amount of time together, because again, they've been making these connections. But, it goes back to intentional. And it's so important today that we have to be intentional about how we show up. It can't just happen. It just, if you think it's just going to happen, then most likely it won't. If we don't make a scheduled time or a concerted effort for it. And some people could say, oh, well, that's a little bit forced. I don't think it's forced. I think it's just being smart, because if you and I say, well, we'll try to find some time on Friday to catch up. Friday turns into one Friday to the next Friday to the third Friday, and then we haven't made time for each other. And I even do that with my friends that live internationally. We have regularly scheduled FaceTime because we want to keep in touch with each other. And that, that's on the professional or on the personal side. That's not even on the professional side. So it becomes even more important as a leader when your team is everywhere virtually, that you look at that and, and ask your team what is going to work for them. I mean, don't put this all on yourself as a leader. Make this a collaborative conversation of, how would you all like to get together? How would you like to show up? What would be a good, activity that we could do? And let them drive it and feel a part of it, and they'll feel much more connected to what it is that you're doing.
These are great examples. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I kind of share the same experience. And I think, as we went out of the pandemic, some of the things we did in the pandemic spontaneously in the beginning, we all want to unconsciously erase, where actually we should not, because some things really benefit for interconnectivity between people.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, like being intentional about keeping some of those. And I had exactly the similar experience where I was like, yeah, oh, maybe it's too much to keep on doing those virtual informal chats, but actually the team asked for that when we started to decrease it. So it's a very good, I think, example, and great tips you shared that I will also take with me. Now, if I move more into the measurement, I know in your book you also talked about this. What for you? How do you measure those skills and the impact in the organization? You talked about motivation. Mm-hmm. I have my philosophy about motivation versus engagement. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, how do you measure kindness, love, hope in an organization as a leader, and make sure that what you're doing is perceived that way and ultimately helping out on your purpose as an organization and your results?
I will start at an individual level first. And, I think it's so important, at least the leaders that I work with and I coach, we always start with some type of feedback mechanism. Some may call it a 360. Some may just get some informal feedback from their team members. Some are doing stay interviews, which are just me checking in with you, maybe quarterly, just how are things going? Are you still excited about your job? I think it's important as a leader that the responsibility comes upon each one of us to do those check-ins and just to get a pulse on that. And again, it can be done formally from a 360 where people can do it anonymously, or you as a leader can be doing that. There's a lot of great resources out there to support leaders and just doing that check-in on their own. And again, I think as a leader, we have such a tremendous responsibility to be doing that, to checking in with how we're showing up, even if no one is telling us we have to. I think we have a responsibility to do that. On a larger scale, what the organizations that I'm working with are doing are engagement surveys. And they will be putting questions in there about specifically related to leadership. How do you feel? Do you feel your leader cares about you? Do you trust your leadership team? Would you recommend this place for some place to work? I'm recently working with an organization to do a culture survey. How does each person feel connected to the organization? Do they feel like leadership is helping them feel that connection? And so, there are more formal ways that you can go about measuring this. And then bottom line, what's your retention? What's your turnover? And if if your turnover seems to be significantly low, I would say to you, you're doing something right, especially today, when even organizations that I've worked with that have never had a turnover problem, ever, they are experiencing it now. So it's, something that they're kind of stepping back going, we were taking this culture thing for granted. We were taking that we were just always doing the right things. It was the right things 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But now we've all gone through something, and now we're determining that some of those things that we thought were right for us are no longer right for us. So how does the organization continue to evolve with that, in transition? And as I said, I think it starts, you can get that feedback on an individual level, and then on an organizational level, looking at engagement surveys, looking at culture surveys. And, you mentioned, and I've been reading a lot of this research that's coming out. I've got a colleague that's been involved in it, of looking at wellness in an organization. And if a culture is toxic, how that is impacting health and stress and heart attacks and, just a number of different things when we're not in that. So there's ways that we can get a pulse and we can measure that. But I think it always starts with me as a leader, and then it grows to we. But as a collective organization, I think at the top, we need to also be looking at ways of how are we measuring how we're doing with this, and then holding every level of leadership accountable for it, which becomes very challenging sometimes to do.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned something about wellness. Sometimes I think we underestimate as leaders even the immediate small impact that we have on people we're talking with on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is the start, right? Like, you can turn someone's day to a positive experience or really a negative thing with a lot of ripple effect on the family, on the well-being during the day, etc. I want now to give you a word, and I would love your reaction to it. So the first word is obvious for you: leadership.
Mm-hmm. A privilege, an honor to be able to help develop someone into the best version of themselves.
Self-care.
Oxygen on you first. Because if you're not taking care of yourself as a leader, how in the world can you take care of other people? And also, second to that, I've got to be modeling it. So if I'm telling my team, you need to be taking care of yourself, and you're not doing it, you're not modeling it, what is that communicating? I mean, that's like a doctor standing there, smoking a cigarette, telling you to stop smoking because it's really bad for you. It's like, okay, it's really bad for me, but you're smoking. Why are you smoking? So same as with the leader. It's, I'm telling you to, take care of yourself, but I don't do it. So it's for you, not me. It's like with our children. We have to model this to know that it's, you're wanting me to do this because you're doing this for yourself too. And again, if I don't do this for myself, me taking care of other people is not sustainable.
So can I double click on this one, especially about what you said in the beginning? So many leaders are tired, so much, staffing shortage, etc. So obviously, the first thing you might be hearing, I'm sure, is I don't have time for this. Like I'm willing for my people to take care of themselves, but I just can't do this. So what's your reaction to this?
I say that, we all have the same amount of time in a week, and how are you spending it? And you need to tell me in a week. And I start low with individuals that tell me this, because you can't start a marathon. You can't get up today and run a marathon. You start with a small sprint, and you get up every day and you do a little bit more. So I tell them in a given week, and I just told somebody this week that I'm coaching. What are you doing for yourself in a week? 1 week, one thing. Is it reading a book? Is it taking a walk? Is it sitting on the couch and binging your favorite show? You have got to have some time for yourself, because if you don't, again, your pace is not sustainable. And it will come out, just like we talked about with the wellness. I mean, so much data coming out with that. So many people getting sick and being run down, and so just looking at that, and some would say, well, it's selfish. I've got so many people I take care of. If I just go off and take a walk, that's, I'm leaving somebody behind to have to do something else. I'm like, yes, you are. You are doing that. I said, but when you come back, you will be able to take care of that person 100 times better than you ever would have been if you didn't go take that walk. And so it's making them know it's okay. But to circle back to the intentionality, I have to encourage them to schedule it. I'm like, get out your phone. Tell me this week. Is it Monday at 5:30? Is it, are you going to get up at 4 because you're a morning person, 4 a.m.? I don't care what it is. And, I know that sounds funny. I do that for myself every week. I'm huge into yoga. I will look at the week and when am I going to do my 2 classes? It varies week to week, depending on my work schedule, but it's happening. It's happening at some point, even if I'm doing it at 7:00 at night up in the bedroom, via a recording on my phone. I'm doing it because I know I need it. And it's not that every time I, go up those steps and I'm tired, but when I get done, I know this has been something back into my own emotional bank account. And I think so often we're concerned about making these deposits into other people's. And if we don't have any money in our own invested, I don't have any money to invest in yours. And so it's just, it's really making leaders realize that, and making them schedule it. And at first it's weird. And then it starts to become something they get excited about, because like, oh, on Monday at 5, I got me time. It's like, unless something happens, and sometimes life does. I know with family, kids, you don't always get to pick the day. But for the better part, if you've got it scheduled, more often than not, it'll happen.
Yeah, and you touched a very important piece, which is being intentional about it. And
yes,
that's a key
absolutely.
Point. What about Lasso?
Lasso?
Yeah, Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. Oh. Well, I was like, I thought that's what you referred to. I'm like, wait a minute, because the next season of that is coming back. It just popped up in my phone. I absolutely love, and it's one of the chapters in the book, Leadership Lessons from Ted Lasso. And my husband was the contributing writer on that one, because as we were watching that show, the practicality of leadership was just coming out. I say this all the time, the common sense that's not common practice. And, some of the things that he says are so simple, but yet so profound. And it's in the way that he just communicates with his team, and the humbleness of himself, of showing up, and, knowing his own shortcomings, but always making people feel good about who they are and their role on the team. And I think as leaders, that's what great leaders do, is that we strive to make you feel good about the role that you play. And if you're, not to the place you want to be today as a player, we'll get you there. I will support you. I will help develop you, and I will believe in you. And that's, I think that was the power and the connection that so many of us felt with Ted Lasso, was that, there's that belief in people, and the power of when you do that, what happens. And you watched all of those characters the last 2 seasons unfold into better, well, with the exception of a couple, better versions of themselves. I'm hoping for redemption in season 3. I don't want to give away any spoilers. No spoilers. But if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. But, I just think you just sit there and you're like, that's so good. That's so good. Why don't we treat more people like that?
Yep. And the last one is spread love in organizations.
It takes all of us, and it starts, as I said this before, it starts with me and it ends with we. And I really believe if me as an individual is spreading that, it's like, be the change that you want to see in the world. If you want peace, be peaceful. And I think it starts with that, just moving that, paying that forward. And I feel it when I go out and when you just have a smile on your face, you just smile, simply smiling at someone. Sometimes the energy that comes back to you with that. I just believe that we can't sit and wait for the world to spread love to us necessarily. I think we have to start spreading it. And when we do, I really believe it comes back. And I really believe the ones like we talked about, that it's more of a stretch for them to do some of these things. I believe it can help inspire them to want to spread it too. And I think then that is the real power of being able to do that, is, as the one gentleman said, he's like, I'm not giving it because I'm not getting it. I may not be getting it, but I'm giving it because I want other people to give it too. And if I can be that and inspire that in other people for them to be able to do it, it's like the starfish. You can't impact every starfish, but as the young boy said, I'm impacting and make it different for the one I just threw back in. And I can't do it for everybody, but I sure just did it for this one. And so, the interactions, those human connections that we have with those people in our circle of influence, how are we helping them do that? And then they're turning and helping those people in their own circle. And then the circle gets bigger and bigger.
Any final word of wisdom, Hope, for leaders around the world?
I say just start where you are, and don't let all that has happened overwhelm. I say use it as an opportunity to be better. And I believe it was Maya Angelou that said, when we know better, we do better, but not putting the pressure on ourselves to show up and have miraculously changed from everything. It's just, how am I showing up today, starting from where I am? And today might be a great day and tomorrow might not be, but not being so hard on myself, and just knowing that I'm going to show up today. I'm going to do my best, forget the rest, and I'm going to try to inspire other people to do the same thing.
Thank you so much for being with me today, Hope, and for this incredible chat.
Well, thank you for continuing to help spread love. We need it. And as I said, it starts with what each one of us can contribute. So thank you for that as well.
Thanks. It means so much. Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Subscribe and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com and on your favorite podcast app. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.